Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame with your hosts, Pierre Camus and Chris Moncano.
Hey everybody, Pierre from the Fantasy Football Endgame here with you to help you with wide receiver waiver wire picks for week 6. That's right, already 5 weeks down. And guess what? Another monster performance by a rookie wide receiver. We're going to get into that and more. But first of all, before we do anything, hit that subscribe button, click on that little bell notification. That way you get the latest and greatest from the Endgame. Not just me, but Chris also giving you some advice on start sit, right? Risers and fallers, waiver wire. We do Endgame live Sunday mornings. Everything you could possibly imagine, instant reaction. If you haven't checked out our video on the Dak Prescott unfortunate situation, do that now. But everything you need is right here. All right. At the end game, our end game is to help you win. So let's start with wide receiver. Now, I think it goes without saying that your top waiver wire pick should be Chase Claypool. So let's talk about the pros and the cons here. So first of all, you will have some pushback from people on this, believe it or not, after a monster performance, 4 touchdowns. He could have had a 5th, except that it's called back because of a penalty. Just a monster game, obviously. But some people will say, well, he's still the third receiver in that offense. It was only because Deontay Johnson was out, right? Well, here's the problem. Deontay Johnson has been out a lot, and he continues to be out, and it's always something different. It was concussion protocol. It's been a toe. And this one, they said it was a back. And if you listen to the broadcast, at one point they talked about the OC there, Randy Fichtner. In Pittsburgh, they love Claypool because he's always available, which basically means they know he's going to be on the field and he's ready to go. Juju's been missing practices. He's still been playing, but, they give him Wednesdays off and, he's not always there. He hasn't really shown up on the field as much as we'd like. And Johnson is in and out of the lineup constantly. Claypool could now become the guy. I'm not saying he's going to be the clear top target, but really this is kind of wide receiver by committee. So right now on the season, and again, Pittsburgh only has 4 games under their belt because they had their early bye, but you got 26, 26, 23, 23. What is that? That's the target share for those 4 wide receivers, thrown in James Washington at the end. It's basically even, all right? And I know that Johnson, when he's back, he'll get worked in. They're not going to just go away from Claypool, especially after this week. He's going to be involved. It's pretty much equal, right? They have a 1A, a 1B, and a 1C, and Washington is kind of a 2. He's just a deep threat. But the point is, Claypool, it's not a 1-week wonder. And I really think they're grooming him to be their next wide receiver 1 because I don't know that Juju's going to be around next year. He's got a contract thing. They might not want to dish out all this money for a player who's had injury history himself. So I'm just saying I'm loving Claypool in redraft and in Dynasty. It's probably too late to buy low now, but it's for real. So add him. He's not going to go away. Make him your top priority as a pickup. All right. My next player is actually a rookie too. Didn't really have a breakout week, but if you notice, the trajectory is going up slowly each week, and that's Laviska Shenault Jr. in Jacksonville. Didn't get in the end zone, so he didn't produce a huge fantasy day, but it actually wasn't too bad. He had 7 catches for 79 yards. And so if you look at the trajectory of where he's been used each week, went from 4 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets. Okay, his receptions each week, 3, 3, 5, 5, 7. All right, you know how to count by twos. You can figure out it's going up each week. And his yardage has also been going up, not surprisingly. He's giving you that nice floor that you want from a third receiver. All right, now, obviously not a lot of touchdowns go around in Jacksonville. Not sure if that will change, but really, outside of Chark, he's their next guy. So I really like what he brings to the table. I'm surprised he's not added in more leagues, probably because he's in Jacksonville, but Shenault is definitely a guy who warrants consideration in full PPR leagues. Now, if you're in a standard league, not so much, just because the touchdowns aren't there to help you. But if you're in a full PPR league, which probably most of you are, I really like Shenault because we know what we're getting from him. Surprisingly, it's the rookies who are bringing the consistency here. Now, a guy who's been totally inconsistent, but we definitely have to look at because definitely sky's the limit for him any given week, and that's Brandin Cooks in Houston now. So he's a guy that we had totally forgotten about because last week gave you 0, literally nothing. Of course, disappeared, and that was a great matchup against Minnesota, and their secondary had been torched, and of course did nothing. So naturally this week he goes off. 161 receiving yards, that was more than Claypool. Of course, he didn't score 4 touchdowns, but still, Brandin Cooks had a monster game. But you don't know what you're getting with him. That's the thing. Now, he's got 2 games where he went for 95 or more yards. And now he has 3 games where he was under 25 yards. So we talk about boom or bust. He's the poster child. All right. So Brandin Cooks, you want to put him in your lineup. And by the way, matchup doesn't seem to matter. Some great matchups, he did nothing. This game wasn't necessarily, I know Jacksonville, of course, not a great secondary, but there's no reason why he should have just gone nuts in this one. And he did. So I know some people will say, oh, does it have anything to do with Bill O'Brien being fired? No, there's no reason it would. Play calling is still the same. I don't think there's any particular reason why Romeo Crennel would say, hey, let's feed the ball to Brandin Cooks. It's just kind of how the game went. All right. So don't expect this to become a regular occurrence, but Cooks is a guy you always can consider in any given matchup. And then my 4th choice for wide receivers this week, guy who had fallen kind of off the radar. I have to admit, kind of tough as a Dolphins fan. I was ready to give up on Preston Williams after last week because, again, same thing. Great matchup in Seattle, did nothing. And so, of course, this week where it's a terrible matchup in San Francisco, he went off. All right. But that's great to see because it wasn't just a matter of Fitzpatrick doing his thing, but Williams actually looked healthy, right? And he just kind of looked sluggish the first 4 weeks. I don't know why. All of a sudden, he went visited the Fountain of Youth or something, although he's already like 23 years old, so that shouldn't matter. Okay, but whatever happened with Williams, he looked really good, and he was getting the ball a ton. 106 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. This is kind of what we were hoping for Williams, that he's obviously the wide receiver 2 in Miami on a team that might have to pass it a lot. And if he can do this, obviously not every week, but if he can have performances like this, he definitely has some appeal in fantasy leagues, both standard and PPR. So keep him on the radar. I'm not saying that he's a must start in any given week, but he does play the Jets in week 6. That's a pretty good matchup, I'd say. All right, and then you might be wondering, probably the biggest name of this week, saved him for last, and that's on purpose. So let me know what you guys think about this one. All right, hit me up on Twitter at roto_chef, or you can give us some comments on at Endgame Fantasy. That's our Twitter account here, of course, or drop a comment here in the YouTube channel. Travis Fulgham. All right, what do we think about Travis Fulgham just going bananas in week 5? Came out of nowhere. This is a guy who wasn't even drafted by the team, drafted by Detroit as a 6th round pick last year, and then got cut, joined Philadelphia. There were 6 other guys ahead of him on the depth chart, and he's only playing because all of them are either hurt or doing nothing. All right. Obviously, Alshon Jeffrey hasn't shown up. Deshaun Jackson keeps getting hurt. Jalen Reagor's on IR. Arcega-Whiteside, he kind of shows up once in a while, but he's not a consistent target. Okay, so there's all these other players that should have been playing, and now Fulgham got his chance, and what did he do? He went insane. 10 catches for 152 yards and a touchdown, and they just kept feeding the ball to him. Okay, so here's my issue. This is what Philadelphia does. They find a guy, they hyper-focus, and they'll feed him the ball, right? I'm talking about targets here. That's why you see games where Zach Ertz would have 10, 12 catches. Dallas Goedert earlier in week 1 before he got hurt had a game like that. Okay, Greg Ward had a game kind of similar to that. He had 8 catches, right, on 11 targets. And so this has happened before, right? Doug Peterson, when something's working, he goes back to it, which is smart, right? He plays matchups. He doesn't just have a set game plan, and a hierarchy. So if a guy is going off, he'll keep giving him the ball. I don't think Travis Fulgham will go off every week. That's just me. Here's the other thing. Those guys I mentioned, Alshon, Deshaun Jackson, they might be back next week. All right. And so by default, Fulgham won't be getting the same number of looks. I kind of feel like this might be a 1-week wonder. I know that's tough to say because he looked great, but if we're going to look at it objectively, I don't think you're counting on anything close to this. You can make a claim for him, but this is not the guy that you want to empty the wallet for. I would much rather have Claypool. So Fulgham is interesting, but he's not someone to just plug in your lineup. Don't count on him being a league winner. All right. I know we think about a guy like Miles Austin several years ago, came completely out of nowhere and all of a sudden had a monster season, became a every week fantasy wide receiver 2. I don't think this is the situation, especially if you've watched the Eagles play. Carson Wentz is not good, right? Just not good this year. So it's not a good situation. I really don't want any part of that Philly offense outside of Miles Sanders anyways. I know a lot of you feel the same way. How do you feel? Give us a comment right here, or like I said, on Twitter. And of course, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content. We got waiver wire for quarterback, running back, and tight end also. All right. Thanks for watching.